your eyes and so on. And so the new trend in getting glasses is buying them online. And so I went to a site, Warby Parker, and I tried it out. It's pretty sweet. You look at styles, and they'll send 5 demos to your house. And you can wear them for a week and try them on and see how you like them. And you send them your prescription, they make lenses, and within 2-3 days, they arrive in the mail. It's fantastic. So I did a lot of glasses shopping this summer. This is a clip from my Amazon profile there. So things I've been looking at this summer, Fleet Foxes on vinyl, a hipster hoodie, and a non-hipster V-neck sweater. So I wanted to draw your attention to the hipster hoodie, because this is what I noticed afterwards. So I went over to my Facebook page, and immediately after visiting these 2 sites, these were the ads that were on my profile. So there's Warby Parker, and others were more specific. This is like, here's a style you might like. I'm like, well, yes, I do like that, because that was one of the 5 that I asked to be sent to my house. And then here comes hoodies. There's a whole lot of stripes going on there for me. But that idea is, I realized the websites are talking to each other in a big, big way. I also like pants, and so I was looking at buying some pants. So I was looking at Old Navy, and within literally a minute of putting these pants in my shopping bag, went over to another site, checked the news, and there's a 30% off Old Navy site. And it was a dude on there, not a lady. And so I realized, man, the websites are talking to each other. I didn't ask them to talk to each other. They're just talking to each other, and they're trying to get me to spend money, which, they're trying to make money, so I get it. So I've always known, advertisers and companies are trying to get my attention and trying to make connections, and so that I will buy stuff. So I always known there was stuff going on behind the scenes that I wasn't necessarily aware of, but that I was pretty cool with. But I didn't realize the degree to which this was happening. And I don't know if you do either, so if not, check this out.
Over the past 6 months or so, a huge amount of attention has been paid to government snooping and the bulk collection and storage of vast amounts of raw data, all in the name of national security. What most of you don't know, or are just beginning to realize, is that a much greater and more immediate threat to your privacy is coming from thousands of companies you've never heard of in the name of commerce. They're called data brokers, and they're collecting, analyzing, and packaging some of our most sensitive personal information and selling it as a commodity to each other, to advertisers, even the government, often without our direct knowledge. Much of this is the kind of harmless consumer marketing that's been going on for decades. What's changed is the volume and nature of the data being mined from the internet and our mobile devices, and the growth of a multi-billion-dollar industry that operates in the shadows with virtually no oversight. Companies and marketing firms have been gathering information about customers and potential customers for years, collecting names and addresses, tracking credit card purchases, and asking people to fill out questionnaires so they can offer discounts and send catalogs. But today, people are giving up more and more private information about themselves online, without knowing that it's being harvested and personalized and sold to lots of different people. Our likes and dislikes, our closest friends, our bad habits, even our daily movements, both on and offline. Federal Trade Commissioner Julie Brill says we've lost control of our most personal information.
Are people putting this together and making dossiers?
Absolutely.
With names attached to it, with personal identification?
The dossiers are about individuals. That's the whole point of these dossiers. It is information that is individually identified to an individual or linked to an individual.
Do you think most people know this information is being collected?
I think most people have no idea that it's being collected and sold, and that it's personally identifiable about them, and that the information is in basically a profile of them.
So I want to talk about the ideas of a profile here. The word dossier, if you're not familiar, if you've ever watched a James Bond movie, you've heard of a dossier, because they always make one out on the bad guy and so on. So a dossier is a collection or file of documents on the same subject, especially a complete file containing detailed information about a person or topic. So I think the shift, one of the shifts that's happening here technologically, is that we've thought in the past the internet's just really big, and the World Wide Web is this kind of nebulous term, and I don't know what it means, but I just see my computer and I just see what I'm looking at, and It's private, it's anonymous, and so on. And the shift now is it's really not. And so this idea of a dossier, this file is being built on all of us and in very specific terms. So I think we hide behind the generality of things, and then the shift in technology is, no, it's actually quite specific now. And it's being built in ways that we don't necessarily understand, like this.
That data becomes much more valuable when it's married to the personal information that's being volunteered on the internet. Take 5 Solutions, a data broker in Boca Raton, Florida, runs 17 websites like GoodParentingToday.com and T5HealthyLiving.com, where people can share stories about their families and health. What web visitors don't realize is that Take 5's real business is collecting and selling the information.
There's all sorts of people coming on now.
That's right.
And there is also an invisible side to the internet that most people have never seen. When you're online visiting websites, you may think you're alone, but you're not, as digital privacy expert Ashkan Sultani showed us using a software program called Disconnect, which was created by a former Google engineer.
What's this stuff?
So when you visit the New York Times homepage, there's a number of companies on the page that are essentially tracking your visits.
When we clicked on NewYorkTimes.com, the software revealed the presence of more than a dozen third parties that the website had allowed in to observe our movements.
These are all companies that either place ads or measure people's behaviors on that site.
So as you're going through the web and doing your searching, you've got a whole crowd following you.
That's right.
There were ad networks and marketing and analytics companies measuring traffic and page views and cataloging our interests.
And some of this information you think is going to go to data brokers?
Definitely.
Wow, look at that.
We found the same thing going on at the 60 Minutes website. They are everywhere.
So they're really inside your computer.
They're inside your browser usually, or your mobile device, yes. They're called.
And you haven't necessarily invited them in.
You have not invited them in. And most computers or browsers allow them in by default.
Do companies collect your web browsing history?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, this is the primary piece of data collected online. As you click through the web and view car sites or read about the news, companies, these third parties, will collect your click stream as you click from site to site to site to see what you may be reading, what you may be interested in, what types of things you might buy.
And almost all of it is for sale, especially any personal information that you might volunteer. The more companies know about us, they say, the more efficient they can make the advertising. You're looking at one of the commercial pillars of the internet. Sultani took us to an online dating site called OkCupid, which asks visitors for all sorts of personal information.
Are you vegetarian or vegan? Do you drink? What's your relationship with marijuana? And what people don't realize, here you're seeing all the third parties that are present on this site, right? So we're seeing.
So all these people are getting the information?
They're getting some of this information.
The website doesn't require users to give their real name, but the IP address and the computer ID number are recorded, and it's not difficult for data brokers to match that information with other online identifiers. There are firms that specialize in doing it.
So you can combine this data with other data that's available and figure out who someone is.
That's right.
By name, by email.
That's right.
The only way you would have known that is by going to the legal section of OkCupid's website, presuming you could find it. Then you'd have to scroll through 3 pages of terms and conditions before finding the privacy policy, which says you should appreciate that all information submitted on the website might potentially be publicly accessible.
I love that. You should appreciate. I want to tell you a couple of things before I go any further. I'm really not trying to scare you. So I did this chapel in junior high on Tuesday, and a lot of them are like, I'm like never using my phone, and I'm never going to download another app. And I'm like, that probably lasted 8 or 9 minutes, all right? I mean, it's not realistic, and I'm not trying to go. What I'm trying to say is this is what's happening, and it's not surprising to God. So the question is, how do we think biblically about this? How do we approach something like technology, social media, the online world, in a way that is biblically rooted? Because this is happening. We're a part of the world. What do we do? How do we handle this? I don't think just pulling out and freaking out is ever a healthy response. And I don't think it's realistic either. So what we're going to do is spend the next 3 chapels, starting with this one, trying to say, okay, what does the biblical worldview of technology look like, and how do we apply it? What does it really look like? And I would ask this of you, and I'll ask it of you by telling you a quick story. Several years ago, we had a technology expert here at BCS and was talking about the online world, and particularly online safety. Now, just to give you a frame of reference, at the time, MySpace was on its way down, Facebook was on its way up. And most students had both profiles. And part of what ruined MySpace was that it got attached to a perception that it's where pedophiles went to find kids. And so the main message at the time was, from this speaker, was don't put personal information on your social media sites, because this is how they find you. And this is how anybody could find you. And you're inviting them in, and the person showed how it happened right in front of the students. So after the chapel was over, and it was really good, and after the chapel was over, I was back in my office, and I had a TA at the time who was a senior. And the junior office was configured differently at the time, and so my TA and I were shouting back and forth, having a conversation. So I said, "What did you think of chapel?" And she said, "Oh, I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was really good, some good information and so on." And then she said this: "I think us older students already knew that stuff, but it was really good for the younger kids." So basically, I'm a senior. I got it. Good for freshmen and sophomores, though. Good for them. Now, what she didn't know at the time, she and I were Facebook friends. What she didn't know at the time is I had her Facebook up in front of me in my office. And the person who spoke, what was their big message? Don't have what all over your social media sites? Personal information. So as she is telling me, I got it, I think we already knew it, good for the younger kids, guess what's all over her Facebook profile? Tons of personal information. And I just thought, you don't see. You're exactly who she was talking to. But there's a blindedness that can come with being used to something and feeling like you're an expert in something. And blind spots are tough because you can't see them. That's why they're called blind spots. So what I would invite you to do over the rest of today's chapel and the next 2 weeks is to say, okay, what do I learn here? What do I learn, and how do I faithfully live out my faith in the online world? Because in the beginning, God, first 4 words of Scripture, applies to this as well. So this is what's happening. How do we as Christians think about this, and how do we respond, right? So that's where we're trying to go in the next several weeks. So here's what we know is happening, okay? You are being tracked, profiled, and pursued. See, one of the differences between collecting information used to be done by the government and the military intelligence, but the people on the other end were trying to hide. What we do now is we give up our information. We freely participate. We don't often know where it's going. So now we have a sense of, yeah, this is where it's going. So I would offer a couple of questions to you. So what does your profile look like? Not what should it, not what, but what does it look like? Let's be in the now. And what are you communicating about yourself? Because you are. You and I are both communicating about ourselves in a variety of ways, and it's being tracked. It's being profiled. Now I want to talk about profile here for a second. Here's something that you're probably familiar with, right? Instagram profile. So take a look at this. This is an adult, Amanda. So Amanda is a passionate social media manager. I don't know what that means, but she's very passionate about it. She's a lover of coffee, wine, fashion, and she loves taking photos with her iPhone 5S. I don't know what that next part is. I don't know how to say that word. So, what is it? Yeah, I still don't know how to say it, but thank you though. So, I don't even know what that is, but she likes it pure. And then she's a happy wife and a mother of 3 snowmen, apparently. So, anyway, there's definitely, habits, habits, and so on. Carefully crafted pictures. I've been eating for a long time, and at no point really in my natural growth did I ever think, I got a cookie and a cup of milk here. Hold on. Got it, sweet. Right? I mean, you just eat it, right? It's good. So all these things, pictures of nature. It's a tree, but a nice tree, and so on. But it's all very. This is where I'm going. It's all very carefully cultivated, and it's meant to link you into her blog. So if you want to read more, there you go, and that's all good. That's all fun. Instagram's fun. And it's designed to bring people into your world. But here's the key, how we understand profiles. Your carefully crafted and cultivated world. And so this is the profile that we understand, and this is what we think really is all there is. So this idea of profile, we need to expand it and say, all right, what's being built about me, my dossier, if you will, is not just what I'm intentionally putting out there and want people to see, it's also what I'm putting out there that I don't want people to see. That's all being lumped together, and it's being done specifically. I mean, at some point, it leads back to you individually. So we need to get past the generality of this and say, okay, if that's the case, and it is, what does my profile look like? What am I really communicating about myself in that sense? Now, I have a 10-year-old son, and he really likes video games, like a lot of 10-year-old boys, and so we went through the huge Angry Birds phase. Right now, it's Clash of Clans, but it's big Angry Birds phase. So, by a quick show of hands, right, if you did have Angry Birds on your phone or tablet, or still do, if you used to have it on your phone, all right, or tablet, just raise your hand. Come on, just get it up there. Feels good. We'll hug afterwards, okay? Nice. Well played. All right. Now, here's the thing with Angry Birds. Again, sometimes you step back, and I do this with 80s video games when I grew up. When you step back, and if somebody who had no idea what Angry Birds is, and they asked you, what is it? And you'd have to go, well, you're these birds, right? And you throw yourself at these ill-tempered and kind of snarky pigs with a high pain tolerance, and you just crash into stuff a lot. And sometimes you could do it in space. Sweet. Okay. So when you say it like that, it doesn't sound like much. Here's what's going on behind Angry Birds.
And if you were one of the billion people who have downloaded the popular game app Angry Birds to your smartphone, or you were one of the 50 million people who downloaded the Brightest Flashlight free app, you didn't realize that the companies that gave them to you for free were using the apps to track your every movement and passing it on to other companies.
Your smartphones are basically little mini tracking devices, and it's collecting information about where you are traveling through the day as it's on in your pocket or in your purse.
Federal Trade Commissioner Julie Brill says geolocation data on individuals has become a hot commodity.
How sensitive is that information?
It's the kind of information that really talks about who you are on a day-to-day basis, where you go, and who you might be visiting with, what shops you may frequent, what time you come home, what time you leave.
And that's not all. The iPhone app for Path Social, which was designed to help young people share photos and memories with friends, was caught sneaking into users' digital address books and filching their contact information.
This app was going into people's phones and collecting that information without their knowledge.
Right. It was downloading their contact list off of their phone. Right.
You say information from the address book. What does that include?
It could include, and did in this case, include things like Facebook usernames, Twitter usernames, birth dates. So it can be fairly detailed and personal information that is contained within a contact list or address book.
The FTC, which is one of the few agencies with any jurisdiction over data brokers, fined the company $800,000 for deceptive trade practices.
Brokers don't know who the data brokers are. They don't know the names of these companies. They have no way to know, what website am I supposed to go to? Who do I call? What letter do I write?
One of the things we get suckered in by the word free. So just think about Angry Birds as an example here. A ton of money and time goes into creating games. I mean, the complexity of these games and the coding that goes on is incredible. It's very, very costly. So part of the trigger that has to go off, we say, okay, if they're offering this for free, what do they want? Because they're not just doing it because they like me, they want something from me. So it's a trade. We'll give you the game, and we'll take this. Now again, I don't know how much you can know about this. But there's a sense of, okay, what's the rest of the story? What's the other side of this look like as you go? So the online world is intentionally layered, more and more so all the time, particularly as things become profitable. So part of it we have to say, okay, what's going on right in front of me that I'm not aware of? I think part of it is there has to be a higher level of thinking and a pause before going into something, whether it's an app, whether it's a site, so on and so forth. I think there's just there's a cultural ethic that just says if it's there, go for it. Or if it's been downloaded a lot, or this one, if it has really, really good reviews, then it must be okay. It must be all right, and it might be. But part of this is learning to think for yourself and not just going by what is presented right in front of you. So this idea of technology, here are the seeds I'm trying to plant today. Worship applies to everything. And I'll make that case in a moment here. Stewardship, nothing starts with us and nothing finishes with us. So there's a sense of we're in the middle. We are taking care. So what does it mean to take care of technology? And I'm going to make two other cases for you. The first one is representation. Okay? Representation. So far I've been saying, okay, so you have this profile that's being built. What are you communicating about yourself? But it goes beyond that, which I'll show you here. These are three things that we care about greatly. And you should. These are good things. These are things that we need to take into account as we go about our lives: public opinion, perception, and representation. I had a junior hire earlier in the year. Somebody hacked into their Instagram and started posting really obscene messages. It was going out to everybody's network. And the student came to me and said, you know, this is going on. We thought, you know, maybe it was a former student that was doing it. Turned out it wasn't. But the number one concern that this student had was representation. People think this is me. I'm not this way. I'm not doing this. I don't want people to think that this is me. I'm being misrepresented. And if that's ever happened to you, you know how that feels. So these are good things: public opinion, perception, and representation. The question is, what is your starting point and what is your ending point? That's the key. Because if we get that wrong, it takes us down a potentially problematic path. These are some familiar verses for you, for many of you. So this is the end of Romans 11, which then goes right into Romans 12, 1 and 2, which gets quoted a lot. So it starts with, this is how Romans 11 ends. For from him and through him and for him are all things. So biblically, what does that tell us? Nothing starts with us and nothing finishes with us. That's where we get the idea of stewardship. So for a Christian, it's not enough just to think, what kind of profile is being created and what am I communicating about myself? As a Christian, what's being communicated about God? What is being communicated about Christ? To him be the glory forever, amen. Now, therefore, if you've never heard this, anytime you see the word therefore, you have to ask, what's the therefore? Therefore. It's a transition. So therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. I want to plant this seed. How you use technology, particularly your phones, because that's the big one, is intended to be an act of worship for God's glory and the good of others. And your own good as well. But you have to start with it. This does not belong to me. This is not mine. In the beginning, God. It changes how we view things. It changes what we take in. It changes what we put out. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Now, here's part of the challenge that you have that I didn't. I'm a digital immigrant, which is just a fancy way of saying I'm old. Right? So I didn't get a cell phone until I was 34. and all it did was make calls. And I think take pictures with its 1.5 megapixel camera, all right? Every picture just looked like space, all right? So they're like, yeah, but it's in my pocket. So I remember the days when we didn't have, right? And things were single function devices and so on. So therefore, I have a historical perspective that says, I remember what it was like not to have these things. I remember what the boundaries were like when they existed and so on. You don't have that. You're growing up online. So to you, having all these things and having all these profiles is normal. And that's okay. But what happens is we tend to be much more familiar with the culture than we are with Scripture. We tend to start with culture. We tend to start with what's happening around us, and oftentimes then halfway through we go, oh yeah, that's right. And then we add a faith component, which typically takes place in the form of rules. Oh, don't do this and don't do that. And there's a place for don't do this, don't do that. But it's not a starting point. So part of it is think for yourself. Just because everybody has it or it's well reviewed or all of these things doesn't mean you automatically just go for it and go, well, everybody says it's okay. Got to think. In the beginning, God. This is then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is. For example, if an app is popular, most people just go for it. And most kids just go for it. Part of you have to start is go, okay, how well do I know myself? What are my vulnerabilities? Where do I struggle? Maybe it's what I'm looking at, but it may just be time. Maybe I struggle with impulsivity, and this app lends itself to being impulsive. You know what it means? You might say no. The longer I've had my phone, the more boring my phone has become, because I realize, you know what? I just don't need that. Or you want to be real, I'll be real transparent with you. I just can't handle that. So I just have to get rid of it. And it's okay. But you need to know you have permission not to feel like you have to have everything. Part of it is you have to go, okay, as a caretaker of this phone, as a caretaker of this computer, how well do I know myself? Maybe that's not good for me. And it's okay to step back and go, I don't have to participate in that. It's okay. And in fact, it's probably what needs to happen. Right? What happens when you use yourself as a starting point? This is what it looks like. Social media then becomes personal branding. If you have ever spent time curating your online profiles, and I mean spending like real time, then you understand personal branding. Now back in the days of MySpace came up with a top 8. And top 8 were your top 8 friends who made the little dashboard. It probably wrecked 1 million relationships. Like, why am I not in your top 8? Well, I would, but I had to put so-and-so. Okay, it was madness. Or Facebook. I remember when I first got Facebook, I spent a lot of time, like, so what bands do I put on there? You ever done that? Because I really like this band, but they're kind of lame. But I mean, I like them, but I don't want people to, so I won't put them on there. Right? You have this kind of hierarchy. Or did you put a band on there because you didn't really like them, but they have a lot of social credibility? Same with TV shows. Do you ever say, right? Anything that you feel like, the whole idea is, how are other people going to perceive that? It's branding. Or if you've ever spent a lot of time going over your picture and your avatar, what profile picture do I choose? The people who are just serial profile picture changers, they just change it all the time, because there's that concern. I just took my profile picture off. I'm like the ghost head now, because I'm just not interesting, and I don't want people to really find me. So, but that's personal branding, all right? Identity based on metrics. The thumbs up, the heart, the like, all of these things, because we get seduced into thinking the more likes, the more friends, the more significance I have. The more credibility I have, the more popularity I have, and so on. And again, not that those things are wrong in and of themselves, but if we start with ourselves, here's what happens. You get this never-ending feedback loop. If you find yourself worrying about how you're being perceived online, you're caught in this. Or if you worry about not being online and in touch. I remember, I think I'm talking to juniors here. This was around, hold on here. This is when you were in 8th grade. So it's okay, it was junior high. We had a junior high event, it was around Christmas. and we were showing about a half-hour clip in here, and it was really important. I mean, it was mostly important because I don't remember what it was, and that was just a few years ago. But anyway, it was really important at the time. And so we told the junior high kids, said, all right, in the back, we've got bins, one for each grade level, and we would like, you remember this? Yeah. We would like you to go, some of the juniors are sweating right now, okay? We'd like you to go back and put your phone in the bin. We just want you to be focused. Literally half of the junior high just recoiled. And they started pushing them further into their pocket, right? And one of them actually said well, are we going to get them back? I thought, nope, going to take your phones, right? I mean, it was I just for a half hour, I just want you to be free of distraction. And some kids, it was pretty funny, because some kids were whatever, right? And they put them back there. Other kids kind of straggled, maybe if I walk slow enough, they'll forget, and I can keep it. And I think other kids just stashed them. They're like, I'm not doing that, right? Now I want you to think about that for a second. There's a dependence there. There's a device dependence that happens when we become the starting point. Because if we become the starting point, we also become the ending point. And there's a whole lot of fear that takes place in between. And so this is the culture that for you is normal. But as Christians, I have to step back and say, I know that's what the culture thinks, but what does God think? How can this be used for the glory of God and good of others? Because it's probably not meant for my social network branding. This also requires some digital disciplines. Some digital disciplines. We need disciplines across the board. We need them with nutrition, we need them with education, we need them with exercise, we need them with our spiritual growth. We've got to have it. So I'm gonna leave you with 3 guiding questions and then give you a little bit of, I'm gonna say homework, it's not really homework, but I'm gonna ask you this. When you think about whatever you're doing online, what's your why? Christians have to ask why. Christians have to be concerned with why they are doing whatever it is that they are doing. Secondly, how will this represent the name of God, Christianity, and my reputation? One of the early frustrations with MySpace and Facebook is that students would put Christian, they would have all their Christian information over here. I'm a Christian, I go to this church, I attend Bellevue Christian School, and college at BMU, I go to Seattle Pacific University, and then you slide over on the other side of the page, and there's lots of things that don't have anything to do with faith, and I'm talking about in a bad way. Clearly sending a mixed message. And at some point, that has to be recognized, that has to be addressed. So is this consistent or confusing? Because you don't represent just yourself. So anywhere I go, I represent Bellevue Christian School. Right? Anywhere I go, I represent Bellevue Christian School, whether I want to or not. And I don't wear I heart BCS clothes everywhere I go and things like that. But people who know, I represent the school. So whether that's my church and so on. If I go out to Bellevue Square and I see students, they don't tend to think, oh, there's Mike, oh, there's Mr. Olson, even though I'm not big on titles. So I'm always representing the school. I just am. I've been here this is my 21st year. I represent the school. I also represent my family. My name enters the room before me. Representation matters. And take that seriously. So here's what I'd like you to do in the next few days. To analyze in terms of your profiles, what's your why? What seem to be the motives behind your posts? And I should say before I go any further, I'm not assuming bad things. I simply am asking the question. So if I look at my posts, the pictures, the words, the things I'm liking, the things that I am endorsing, what do I seem to be going for? What are my motives there? Secondly, Jesus asked his disciples, who do you say that I am? He said, who do people say that I am? So my question to you and to everyone is, so if you're a Christian, who do your profiles say Jesus is? Because whether you want to or not, that is who you are representing. So it's important that we think about these things. And finally, if you're a Christian, are your profiles sending mixed messages about your stated faith and the actual practice and beliefs? The non-Christian world is not looking for Christians to be perfect, but consistency is very powerful, and inconsistency is very troubling, particularly when it's something like an online profile that you are contributing to. So to think about these things and go, okay, if I take a step back and I just look at my Facebook and my Instagram and my Twitter and all the other accounts that I have, what seem to be the motives and the messages that are coming out? Just right now, just look at them and let the feedback you get guide you, okay? Next week, we'll have a guest here who will take you deeper into this and who's a whole lot smarter and more talented than I am. It's going to be an excellent chapel. That'll be next Thursday. So let's pray, and then we'll get you out of here. Lord, thank you for technology. This chapel could not have been put together without it. Thank you for the creativity that you have given people, the ideas that you are putting out there. There's such good things, Lord. It enriches our life so much. But help us to be thinkers and help us to be obedient to your guidance. Give us the wisdom, give us the discernment, give us the discipline to use what you have given us well, to use it for your glory in a way that makes you look good, and that also blesses others in whatever form that takes, Lord. Give us the courage to take the steps that are necessary, whatever that looks like. In your name, amen.